Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to part 12 of Finding Your Path, Mesilas Yesharim. Our explanation of trying to find our own path using the Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just as our signpost. And we've now reached Perek Daled, the fourth chapter. Perek Daled is where he describes how a person acquires the midah of Zehirus. Zehirus is translated sometimes as watchfulness or carefulness. Basically, it's making sure that we don't fall foul of the Torah's negative commandments. So this chapter is specifically about how you do that. The first part, which covered last week, was basically, maybe just to go back over that, there are three groups of people. The most elevated group of people, he calls the Shleimei Adas. I don't know how you translate it into English. Shleimei means like perfect or complete, of da'at, of intellect, of knowledge, of awareness. So people on the highest level, what motivates them to analyze their actions, to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing and not transgressing the Torah's lavim, negative mitzvahs, is the thought that anything less than perfection is really nothing. It's a kind of an extreme, I guess, an elevated way of looking at things, that if perfection interests you, if perfection is really what you want, then anything less than perfection is like nothing. As we said last week, it's a bit like having an orange juice bottle that says 99.99% pure. So to somebody who looks at that, who is a Shleimei Adas, says, that's not pure. It's not pure at all, because pure, it's like, it's either pure or it's not pure. So somebody with that mentality, what will motivate them is the idea that if he doesn't exert himself as much as he can in his zehirus, his watchfulness, he will not achieve the status, the level of perfection that he as a personality sees as being essential. Again, because there's no such thing as second good. There's either a tick or a cross, that's it. There's nothing in between. And he also mentioned an interesting idea, which is kol echad is nichve me chuposu shel chaveiro, which is a strange expression which basically means everyone is burned by the chuppah, the tent of their friend. This expression really means that when a person gets upstairs and he sees somebody who was not unlike him, and this person is on a much, much higher level in the world to come, so he feels very disturbed by this, very literally burnt up. Now, has to be stressed, we're not talking about jealousy. He's very happy that this other guy's got what he's got, but he still finds it very difficult because he knows deep down that I could have been like that. And the fact that he didn't achieve this shleimut, so that is something which will bother him tremendously, says Mesilas Yesharim. That's something that a person, if you're on the level of Shleimei Adas, that's something that you should bring to mind, that you'll get to a place one day where you'll see people not unlike you who've done it and you didn't do it. Now, think about that. How do you feel? How are you going to feel then? So based on that, that should goad you, that should encourage you to work as hard as you can to make sure that you're a zahir, you're watchful, you're careful, in the manner that we described in previous shirim. Okay, so now tonight we're going to deal with what he calls the puchusim me'ela, those who are on a lower level than these. In other words, I guess, if there's first class, business class, and economy, this is business class. But again, this is also a high level. So we haven't yet reached the hamon am, the regular people in society. We'll see what motivates them. But let's talk first of all about what motivates somebody who's slightly lower, or lower than somebody who's a shalom hadas. So you have your book there. Yeah. Achla pechusim eila. You have that. But for those who are, it's chapter 4. Chapter 4. And I don't know how it's all broken up in different paragraphs. Maybe you want to give me your book. It's okay. It's fine. Here. Chapter 4. This is all the way down here, okay? Wow, okay, chapter 4. It doesn't put the chapters in. Interesting.
Oh, there's upstairs.
No, it doesn't put it at the top of the page. Chapter 4, here we are. Okay. Ach, lepechusim me'ele.
Okay.
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay. So those who are on this lower level, tieh ha'era lefi ha'havanasom. So those on a lower level, again, how do you motivate yourself to be a Zohar here? That'll be on a lower level. Lefi inyan hakovod asher heim misavim loy. V'zeh ki zeh poshad eitzel kol baldas she'ein hamadregus mischalkois b'olam ha'amiti shehu b'olam haba el lefi masim u'shalo yisromeim sham el mi shehu rav maasim mechavero. Let's translate. So, those on the level, what stimulates one, what encourages them to be a Zohar, is the idea of kavod, of respect, of status. And, of course, this is not something which speaks to somebody on the highest level, but on somebody on the lower level, he's a status seeker. And let's make no mistake about it, most of us, one or another, are status seekers. We want acceptance. We want people to like us. We want people to think we're great. And if people don't think we're as great as we think we are, that bothers us. I mean, the whole world is really geared, and he's going to say this, to its illusory ideas of status. You know, people, that whole idea of signing somebody's autograph, or because somebody can play a guitar better than somebody else, you know, you want to know what he had for breakfast in the morning. It's like, you know, the whole idea of celebrity, if you think about it, is certainly in the secular world very illusory. But nevertheless, it's a tremendous motivator. So says the Yesharim, a person can use this failing to motivate himself to become a Zohar. It's clear to everybody with any intelligence that the levels of success are divided, are structured, are stratified according to the amount of effort that you put in the world of truth, which is Olam Haba, which is the world to come. And those stratifications, those levels, are entirely according to the actions that a person did in this world. You learn X amount of Torah, so you're on that level. You learn X minus 1, you're on that level. You did X amount of Chesed, you're on that level, X minus, etc., etc. Every mitzvah, every word of Torah is going to be reflected in the world of truth when the time comes. And therefore, as he says, V'lo yisromeim Elohim, Sham Ela Mishahu Rav Maasim Mechavero. And the level, the pecking order, the celebrity, quote unquote, of Olam Haba will be entirely according to your Maasim. You know, what did you do? V'asher ma'at me'amaasim hu yeh shofal. And somebody who slackened off and didn't try very hard in terms of his keeping the Torah. He wasn't very careful when it came to where he ate. Wasn't very careful to say Kriya Shema when he should have done. It's a bit lasse. Wasn't very careful in the way he spoke to other people. Wasn't very careful in his davening or his Torah learning. So it's clear to him that somebody who will do this will end up. So then how can a person hide his eyes from the fact, from his actions, or to minimize them, minimize his efforts in his mitzvahs? If afterwards, vadai, yetza loy bezman shelo yuchal l'sakein es asher ivsoy. If it's going to come out afterwards that there will come a time and place where his efforts will be revealed exactly as they were. And at that point, says the Mesilas, there's nothing to do about it. That's the essential point to remember here, that Olam Hazeh, I think he spoke about this at the beginning, is a prose door, is a corridor to the world to come. But once you're in the world to come, Olam Haba, that's it. What you did, and what you didn't do, you didn't do. There's no way you can fix it. והנה יש מהפסוקים מבקשים רק להקל מעליהם, and there are those people, again on this lower level, who seem to say to themselves, why do we want to kind of be so, like I guess they call it so frum, so careful about working so hard? We should trouble ourselves, wear ourselves out in all this chassidus, all this saintliness and precious, and separating ourselves from the things which may lead us to Aveira. Why do we have to go so far? It's enough that, we're not going to be end up with the Rishoyim in Gehinnom. We're not going to push ourselves to, to get ourselves into the royal enclosure, lifnai lifnim, right? To get ourselves front row seats in Olam Haba. If we don't have such a great seats, so to speak, we'll have a small portion, meaning we'll be able to see what's going on from the top row of what they call in England in the gods, those seats the cheapest seats right at the top of the theatre. That's enough. We don't have to be so pushing ourselves. That's going to be enough for us. V'lo nachbid oil maso'enu ba'avozois. And we're not going to, make heavy the burden upon us to stretch ourselves to achieve that kind of level. Omnam. Shela achas nishal mehem. Let's just ask these people one question. Somebody would think like that. Hayicholu kol kach al nokel lisboil ba'olam hazeh. Could a person really tolerate, if the same situation were to happen in this world, hachoylef, to this world of an upside down world, leros echad mechaverem mechubodu menusa yose mehem umoshel alehem? Could somebody really tolerate to see somebody who was in their mind lesser than them, elevated above them, and ruling over them? Like there's some kind of geek in your class who everybody thinks is, like a bit of a weirdo, and then suddenly becomes Bill Gates or something, and you go, that's going to burn you up. I was in the same class as him, and I was better than him at math, and I was more popular than him, and I was better looking than him, and I was better in the football team than him. So if that's the way a person thinks, when what we're talking about at the end of the day is a load of shtuyot, is a load of nonsense, really imaginary levels of success, as we said before, celebrity and acclaim, which really don't amount to a whole pile of beans, and nevertheless that gets somebody really riled up. Surely, when you get to the world to come, the world of emes, where there's a true value there, and it's truly the value that he is now on top of you, and this is not only, and it's forever. So if a person knows that it would bother him very, very much to see somebody that he thought wasn't very special above him, ruling over him, as we said, in this world of illusion, of emptiness, of false values, surely alachas kam v'kama, how much more so in the eternal world, which is a world of truth and true value, then that should bother him. That's the question we will ask these people. You really sure you want to be satisfied with a seat right at the top of the theatre? You really sure that you're going to be satisfied with just a little piece of the action? When you see all these other people are going to be in front of you, how would you feel about that? Lo, vadai, surely not. Ki hinei, eineni harois, our eyes see, kol amal ha'adam, linosei al kol mi sheyuchal lasim l'makom bein haramim yoseh. We see how everybody tries their very best to up their status, to get into the A parties, to be on the A list, to be a celeb, to be super rich, to be on the front page of the pages because he's super rich. Kinas ish mechavero. Because we see people are jealous. Ve'im yireh chavero misroimem. And if he sees his neighbor uplifted, he's promoted, he's doing very well, he's on the up and up. V'hunishal shafal, and he remains where he is, a nobody. V'adei shema sheyisbel hu ma sheyuchrach l'sovlo. The fact that he tolerates that is for one reason only, which is he can't do anything else. He's forced to put up with it. Ki lo yuchal limnoya v'lavovo yisashesh bekirbo. And he can't stop it. He can't stop his friend rising up above him. Nothing he can do about it. And inside, he's quaking with anger. So ma'ata. So now, okay, if we see that in this world, imkach kosher aleihem lios shvolim mizulosam. If it's so difficult for a person to be lower than his chaver, his fellow, b'mala samadumos v'hakois voice. When it comes to, as we said, values which are empty and worthless, she'ein hashiflas bom ela lefonim, because this lowliness is only. How does he translate lefonim there? Translate that. Lefonim. She'ein hashiflas bom ela lefonim, because the lowliness in those things are only, I think it means like illusory, are not really important. In other words, the lowliness is not really lowliness, because who cares if you have a Ferrari or not? V'lo ha'hisnase ela shav v'sheker, and the so-called elevation and the celebrity, that's worthless. So both sides of the coin, right? The lowliness is not really a lowliness, because the values are no values, and of course the highness, the superiority is also not very superior, because again the value system is completely worthless. So if that's all true, how could he therefore bear to see themselves, these people, lower than those people who are now lower than them? In other words, the people below them are going to overtake them. And now all of that's going to be in the places we said before, of true elevation, of true superiority, of true greatness, and everlasting worth. Because even now that they don't recognize this value of mitzvahs and Torah, so therefore they're not concerned about that. But come the time, they will surely see it clearly, to their pain, or levashtom, and to their embarrassment. So vadai shalo, when a person thinks like this is again what motivates a person on the level of pechusim me'ashlemi adas, second stage, business class as opposed to first class. Vadai shalo yeh lahem ze ela tzagot. So I skipped there. Harelecha ein. 1 second. I skipped it. This is certainly going to cause them, as I said before, great and eternal pain. So harelecha, you see, she'ein hasavlonas hazeh, asher heim dorshim la'atzmam lahokel, mehem choyme ha'avoida, ela pitui koisev, shemafate yitzram osam. So this kind of false reasoning that they convince themselves they don't really need to struggle too hard to do the mitzvahs with great care, and to daven, and to learn, and to do the things to the maximum of their ability. This is none other than a twisted seduction of the Yetzer Hara. If they think of it in these terms, they'll realize that, even though they don't see it now, that what's going on right now, where this voice inside of them is saying, why bother so? Don't try so hard, you don't need to. And of course, this is not a true voice at all. It's the Yetzer Hara. Ukava lo haya mokam lefitu lehem lule hayu roim amita sa'inyan. And of course, this voice would have no success whatsoever if they would only see the truth of the matter. This is very important. But because they don't seek it, v'holchim v'shogim l'ritzonom, and they go and they do shogeg. They do things without realizing it. They're not focused on what's going on. Lo yusa mehem pituam ad hasman asher lo yo'il lehem. So this seduction will not cease, will not leave them alone until the time where the fact that they realize what's going on is not going to help them anymore. Because then at that point they will no longer be able to fix that which they've ruined. That's what Shlomo HaMelech says in Koheles. He says, Kol asher timsa yodcha lasos b'kochcha aseh ki ein maaseh v'cheshbon v'das. He says, everything that you can find in your hand to do with your power, meaning as much power as you have, do it. Because ein maaseh v'cheshbon v'das, because in the world to come, there's nothing you will basically be able to do to fix it up afterwards. V'hainu, and that is, ki ma she'eina odom oiseh ad shahakoyach musa biyodoi miboiro hu hakoyach habechiri hamusa lo kol yemei chayov. This power that he's talking about, that is, what a person doesn't do, and what a person doesn't do until the power that he's been given is taken away from him by his creator. That is the power of choice. In Olam Haba, there's no choice. Olam Hazeh is a place where you can choose. So that is the freedom of choice, the ability, the power, really I should say, of choice, which is given to a person all the days of his life. Shubahem bechiri umutsuva lasos. That they, so that is the person. How does he translate this? Shehu bahem bechiri, but they are the choice ones. Umutsuva lasos, and the person is commanded to do them.
The power of choice that is given to him to employ during his lifetime.
And then what does it say?
When he can exercise free will and is commanded to do so, he will not again have the opportunity of doing it in the grave and in the pit.
Good, thank you. Shehu bahem bechiri u'metzuve lasos. That's what he's here. That's what he has. Freedom of choice to choose the right thing. Hinei lo yuchal lasos ha'od bekeva v'sho'il. He won't have this ability, as we said before, to exercise his power of choice when he's in the grave or in the pit. She'ein ha'koyach hazeh oid biyodo. Then that power will no longer be in his hands. Ki mi shelo hirba ma'asim tovim b'chayov. Somebody who does not increase to the maximum his good deeds in his life, iev shala sosam achakein. He can't do them afterwards. Umi shelo chishev cheshbon ma'asov. And this person again who doesn't take stock of his actions, lo yeh lo zman lachshov lachashvoy oz. Then he will not be able to take stock of them. Then nothing he can do. Umi shelo his chakeim. Somebody who doesn't smarten up, become wise. In this world, lo yishakem bekeva. He will not become wise in the grave. V'zeu, that's what it says. It's the pasuk says, Ki ein masim v'cheshbon, as Shlomo HaMelech said, Ki ein masim v'cheshbon v'das v'chochma b'shol asher ata holech shama. That's the continuation. He quotes it in full here. Because there is no action for cheshbon and calculation, or das, or knowledge, or intelligence, for hachma, or wisdom, in the pit, which you are going there. Everybody is going to go to that place. And if a person doesn't succeed in breaking through the natural seduction of this world, to take it easy, then he will find himself less. And as we said before, that's going to bother him immensely, because it'll be true value and forever. Okay, so now we've dealt with first class, we've dealt with business class. Let's go down to economy. Ha'ora l'chol hemon. However, what should awaken the rest of the Jewish people, the rank and file, let's say.
Like Shomer Shabbos, regular Jews.
People who are, let's say, I think this is not so much performance of mitzvahs. Yeah, I guess so, but people who are their personalities. I think it's more like the way a person thinks. There are people who you see desire perfection. That's the highest level. There are people who recognize that there's status, and that second way of approaching things will appeal to them, as we said. And now there's a third level of people who we're going to see how he describes them. So the regular rank and file, Joe, how do you say, Joe in the street, what motivates a person like this is, in essence, reward and punishment itself. He has to remind himself of how deep the judgment is on a person, how specific it is. That if a person thought about it, it would be fit to really to shake and tremble. In a state of constant fear. Now I want to say here, this is very non-PC, right? It's very difficult for people now to talk to people about these things nowadays. Because we're on a very weak level. We're a very weak generation. If you get up and start talking to people about the fact that, they're going to be punished in Olam Haba if they don't keep the Torah properly, it's a hard sell. Nowadays, people just aren't willing to hear that. I mean, my Rabbi told me that as a bar mitzvah boy, his grandmother told him on the day that he became bar mitzvah, and clearly she thought this was something that every bar mitzvah Jewish boy should hear on the day of his bar mitzvah as a sort of, something to take through his life to keep him on the right path. She said to him in Yiddish, of course. He said, in the Yenevelt, in the world to come, they hit you with iron bars. Now, I'm not too sure that's a mitzvah speech that you will hear from too many grannies nowadays. But the fact of the matter is that he's talking about the fact that nobody wants to have pain. I mean, nowadays, of course, Baruch Hashem, we're spared most of the pain. I remember when I was a kid, we used to go and have a tooth taken out. So, Baruch Hashem, there was anesthetics, but actually the injection was almost as bad as the tooth instruction because they had these huge, syringes with really thick needles, that you could really feel going in there, and the injection was almost as bad. I remember nowadays you go in there and they have the little gel, right, the gel they put in first to kind of numb up the surface of the skin. And okay, I'm not going to say it's the most pleasant experience of the world, but by and large, but if you've ever had a really bad toothache, if you've really ever had pain, you ever been in pain, God forbid?
I can relate right now.
Nobody, from your leg. So nobody wants pain. People go a long way to avoid pain. So the lowest level, those people in an economy, if they want to motivate themselves to be careful, not to break the Torah, what motivates them? Schar v'oinish. Reward and punishment. And if a person really thinks about that, as he says, the omek adin, how far that goes, how exacting is the tribunal, the court upstairs, when they will analyze in a detail which is unimaginable to us, our every deed, our every thought, then it should cause even somebody in the economy cabin to think very carefully about what it is they're doing and whether they're doing what the Torah demands of them. Kimi, turn the page, Yama b'Yom Adin, because who can stand up in the Yom Adin? Which one of us are going to be able to acquit ourselves? And who can justify himself in front of his Creator? Ba'asher hashkafoso mudakdekes al kol dova kotten ogodol, whose hashkafa, whose gaze is absolutely precise, whether something, an action, small action or a large action, Hashem sees through it, sees it exactly as it is. And there's no bribery, there's no corruption, that's it. Ve'ein amru b'nu sallam levrachim. That's what our Chazal, our rabbis teach us. in Chagiga. Umagid la'odam ma seicho. And when the time comes and a person goes upstairs, they will repeat to him his conversation. So I remember the Chavetz Chaim once took a Musa idea from the fact they had his day in the 20s, the international telephone started to be something. So he said, now I understand something that it was difficult for me to understand, how a person can say something here and it can be heard in a very far away place. He took the telephone as a mashal. We have even greater mashalim. We have phones with cameras and recording, and you can record everything a person does. In Olam Haba, they even have, and now they're going to put chips in people's heads. So in Olam Haba, they have a recording of everything you said, everything you did, everything you thought. It's very easy for us to picture that because we have the symbols, the mashalim, the parables of that readily to hand. And so really, I guess the lower level we are, more Hashem gives us these ways of understanding how far this din goes and how much everything will be taken and written down in a book. Kal ma'asecha nichtavim b'sefer, says in Pirkei Avos. All of your actions are written in a book. Now we can understand all your actions are recorded. They're on tape. They're in the sky on a cloud server. They will tell him at the time when he has to have din v'cheshbon what he said. Afilu sicha kala bein ish leishtoi, magidim lo laodam b'shas din. Even a sicha kala, a light conversation, I would say probably means like a flirtatious conversation between a man and his wife will be said to him at the time of din. Everything that he did will be how do you say will be replayed to him, and we're going to go into a lot of psukim here now. So I'm going to draw it to a close fairly quickly. Od Omru, and it also says Visfis Savivov Nis Ara Moed, and around him it's extremely stormy. To teach you that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is precise with his saintly ones to the precision of the width of a hair. Then the mashal here, as we've seen, is like he gives of a storm. The storm has what they call the eye of the storm. So the eye of the storm, Kaviyachal, is Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's the place of peace. But the storm rages hardest, closest to the center. So the closer you are to Hashem, so the more exacting is the judgment.
Regarding this point, in Pirkei Avos, I think I read commentaries of Roch Chaim. He said the way a person judges other people in this world, same way he will be judged in the world to come.
Right.
But here it's more about closeness. Over there, it was more about relationship. Whereas
This is talking about relationship to Hashem. The closer you are to Hashem, the more the more exacting is the judgment. Okay, so I think we'll stop here and we'll carry on next week with. He's going to go through a list now of tzaddikim in the Torah and Novi, who we see were punished for what seemed to be really very minor things, to show how the closer is to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, the more medakdek, the more precise is the judgment. Okay, I wish you a good week. We'll see you B'ezrat Hashem next week.